Call the Village of Johnsburg, May 21st, 2019, regular meeting of the President and Board of Trustees to order at 7 p.m. On the roll, Trustee McAvoy.
Present.
Trustee Curry.
Here.
Trustee Hagan.
Here.
Trustee Frost.
Here.
Trustee Clemstein.
Here.
Can we stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The oath of office was left on there from last time by Eric. So, from the floor, any public comments from our guests tonight? No? For sure? Okay. All right. With there being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the omnibus agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee McAvoy, seconded by Trustee Frost. Discussion on the motion. Anything that you would like pulled?
And I don't think we have to pull it, but I was just curious if the nuisances with the stormwater, is that gonna help us with that situation on Spring Grove Road?
Yes, exactly. That's one of the
That's-
issues that's driving it.
Yeah.
That was the driving factor.
Oh, perfect.
Any other discussion? With there being none, Trustee Clemstein,
Aye.
Trustee Frost,
Aye.
Trustee Hagan,
Aye.
Trustee Curry,
Aye.
Trustee McAvoy, motion carried. President's report. I'd like the advice and consent to the board to appoint Ken Calhoun to Planning and Zoning. We're down
Two people right now. He requested, the last time we sent out letters, that if a position became available, that he would like to switch to that committee. So
is he moving off of your committee?
I guess so.
well, not unless Tom wants him off, but I think Tom appreciates his help, and
Yeah.
if he wants to stay, we would be willing to let him stay on both, at least.
Yeah, I don't want him off. He hadn't said anything to me about it, so I don't know. Sorry, keep beating him.
He didn't say he wanted off of your committee, Tom. He just indicated the last time that he wanted to be in planning and zoning.
Okay.
And he's been involved long enough that I think he'd be a good member there, and that, we lost Beth now because she ran, and Beth isn't here tonight because she, one of her daughter had a surgery that was quite involved, so that's what happened there, so I'll make up excuses for her not being at her second meeting, so that's why she's not here. But anyways, does anybody have a problem with Ken going planning and zoning? He has not requested to quit community affairs, so unless he says something, I'm just gonna leave him there.
Okay.
Okay? All right. General consensus, say aye. Aye. Done. Okay. The public hearing Michael's going to do for the Comcast franchise agreement, it's really procedural. The state controls it. We have to go along with it, but we have to have the hearing. So, other than that, Michael?
Yes, federal law requires a public hearing on the Comcast franchise renewal. Opening the hearing at this time, is there any public comment? Seeing none, I now close the public hearing on the proposed Comcast franchise agreement, and it's up to the board to take action on it when it wishes.
Can I have a motion?
So move.
Motion by Trustee Frost, seconded.
I'll second.
Trustee Hagan. Any further discussion or questions on the motion? Trustee Curry.
Comcast has two must-be abandoned pedestals at one at along Sandalwood and one along Lake Dawnwood. Open, nothing in them. I'm just wondering if we could get them to get their stuff.
We'll reach out to them.
We'll reach out to them and see if that can be done.
All right, thank you.
Good point.
I think all those pretty trees.
On the page, see that, planting trees.
I did.
Next. Did one of the tree go?
Okay. Any other concerns? With there being none, Trustee McAvoy?
Aye.
Trustee Curry?
Aye.
Trustee Hagan?
Aye.
Trustee Frost?
Aye.
Trustee Clemstein?
Aye.
Ordinance Pass. Mr. Hanson from Kluber, David G. Dominguez, and we will be referring to that as the Village of Johnsburg, David G. Dominguez Municipal Center will be the title, just like is on the presentation tonight. So that's what we proposed, so I want to refer to it as that. Chris?
Well, thank you, everybody. I have been asked to put together just a brief overview of the first step in the process for the development of the new Village Hall and Police Department facility. A couple of these slides you may have seen during the interview. A couple have been added. So really the key here is just kind of talk you through what is that first step in the process. How do we involve staff, administration, as well as all of you as trustees of the board into the mix. And we like to keep things extremely simple. So I think what you're going to see tonight is really a high-level overview of the first step in the process. The team, I was asked to give just a brief overview of the team for those trustees who are not a part of the interview process. Myself, Chris Hanson, I've been with Kluber Architects and Engineers now for 23 and a half years. I'll be the head project manager for the project. I do lead our government services sector, everything from municipal up through federal government work. So we're very familiar with how to deal with public sector work and development and working with communities and boards. Assisting me will be Mike Elliott. Mike is our head designer. He and I have been working together now for a little over 10 years. Mike has extensive experience as well in the design specifically of municipal facilities in addition to myself. So we're going to bring that same expertise to the group here. And then supporting the balance of our team, we have full service of engineering in-house. So even early on, we'll be incorporating conversations and coordination discussions with electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, plumbing, fire suppression. We have structural as well, all in-house. So I think having that cohesive team and then also working in conjunction with your civil engineer, H.R. Green, it'll be a nice holistic team effort in the development of the actual planning for this project. In addition to that, as you can see kind of at the bottom, we are supported by a whole series of individuals that are part of our project team on the municipal sector side. The idea today is what are we doing as the first step of the project? Our actual RFP response to you was initial design services. Well, what does that include? We were absolutely thrilled that the village actually had a preliminary program statement. A program statement is simply the number of spaces within a building, the quantity of those spaces, and the sizes of those spaces. We'll talk a little bit about that and why that's important. But those spaces then become the basis by which we establish what the approximate size of the building is going to be. The other piece of this is we call it a schematic design. What is schematic design? Those are the very early site development and floor planning, as well as some aesthetic selection components that we will talk together with all of you as a group. I will say we have a very interactive process. You'll probably see Mike and I here almost every month for the next at least 3 months as this work is being developed, because we love to keep all of you informed. And then ultimately we'll be preparing a preliminary cost estimate. I think what was very clear as part of our interview, and I think I made the statement, was let's make sure we know the size and we know the budget before we get too far ahead of ourselves. There's nothing worse than coming backwards if we can't afford something. So the key and the expertise we do bring is we do have excellent cost estimating in-house. Those that design actually do the own estimating for their respective disciplines. So with that, will also be able to guide you in making those decisions on the quality and the size of the building moving forward. And then most importantly, at the end of this step, we'll be seeking board approval to move forward with the project based on the overall size, the development concept, and the budget that you all approved. So really, this is just the first step. We showed this during our interview. Well, there's a lot of ideas. What can this building be? How do we compile those ideas and pull them all together to develop that program? Again, you already have kind of a step in some of these areas, but we did note that some of your program had holes in it. There are certain spaces that were not discussed that we do need to discuss that may need to be a part of the project, or it might not need to be a part of the project. Nonetheless, those are things that we'll be talking about as we gather all of your ideas. And this is really the way we work. We work around a table. It's an open forum. It's an open session. We like to work in teams and committees if possible. What we normally recommend is we'd love to have, at this early stage of this first 90 days worth of work, a small committee put together that can see how the project is developing and maybe jump into a couple of meetings. We invite the trustees to jump in when they're available. We want to solicit your input in addition to administration as well as staff throughout the village. And then what happens is we start to do a tabular format. This happens to be the actual program statement for a building that we just opened in the village of Roscoe. We showed some of that information last time, but I think the key here is it's the area, how many quantity, what's the subtotal, what's the overall total for the building, but then we also have to add on factors for mechanical, circulation within the building, and these generally are pretty doggone close based on our experience. About 32% of the overall building size is mechanical and circulation space to be able to get to spaces. Spaces are an office, 10 by 12, 120 square feet, but the hallway that's 4 or 5 feet wide in front of the office to get to that space has to be accounted for in the overall plan. So that's where these circulation factors come in. In this particular project, we had a facility that was approximately 14,000 square feet. We also talked about spaces for patrol car storage, whether or not it's in the building, out of the building. What are the site parameters by which we need to provide programmatic space for? Number of vehicles on the site. Where's the stormwater going to go? How many public parking spaces do we need? These are all program elements that we'll talk about very early on in the process. So one of the other things we'll do, and we'll do this in conjunction with HR Green, is we conduct, our initial site analysis. What do we have? What are the utility locations? What are the limitations on the site, if any? Where do we want to have primary access to the building? Should it remain here on the front of the building off this parking lot where you're more accustomed to it? Does the design suggest that maybe an entranceway is that direction? Those are all the types of things that we look at together. In this particular case, what we thought was interesting was, even though the existing village hall was right in this location, and believe it or not, the original police station was a gas station that they converted. We ultimately chose, based on the planning of the site, to tear down that original structure because it was more problematic to try and keep it than to try and build new without it. Once we kind of have an idea of what the programmatic spaces are, we will then develop a floor plan, an initial plan. This is the type of document you're going to see from us in this initial phase. It's the actual spaces, where they're located. We will begin to populate things even as simple as furniture and equipment to make sure things fit in the space and they function properly. But more importantly, we'll also need to consider, in this particular case, this was the original footprint of Village Hall, right here. And you can see we actually utilized this area right here, we actually renovated. This area was a shelf space for future build-out that we actually used to our advantage. We had somewhat of the same thing here, where we had an existing portion of the village hall. Whether or not we incorporate this, how do we incorporate it, what might it be? I think those are all questions that we have to work together to solve. And then ultimately, as we begin to develop more thoroughly the site, you can see we now are adding the actual footprint of the building that was in the floor plan on the previous diagram. We talk again about whether or not there needs to be any secure parking. In this case, this is the parking area for all of the police vehicles. We'll talk about where does public parking want to be, and is there any need for potential barriers from the public from those vehicles. Again, it's just an additional site development concept. But then more importantly, we also talk about, well, what type of materials, what's the quality of the finish level that we want to have for the village hall? What might it start to look like? In this particular case, this was the original village hall and the aesthetic. And one of the things they said to us was, we just built this like 6 years ago. We want to make sure that we begin to pull in some of those same elements, such as the stone piers, the actual cast stone facade, and the brick, to harmonize with what was there, so it didn't look foreign. It actually fit within the neighborhood. So these are things that we'll be talking about in terms of this initial phase. And this is kind of a look of the outside impound lot when it was completed, the front doorway entrance to this particular facility. This happens to be a facility up in Lindenhurst that we just finished. And then this lower picture is for renovation we just did to the village hall, and that one was South Belgium. So at that point, I was asked to be pretty brief tonight. Does anyone have any questions regarding the first step of the process? Yes, sir.
What's your estimated schedule?
Good question. We believe that the first step, the program validation or verification phase, usually takes us about 30 days. And then the schematic design phase is normally about 60 days for a total turnaround of approximately 90 days for this first step, coming back to you with an overall concept plan and a budget. So about 3 months from now.
So then, Kevin, we would then go, based on your approval, to the design stage, preparing the construction documents, and our goal is to be ready for bidding in February, March of 2020, and construction to start in spring, and the ribbon cutting, and we're in here in the spring of 2021.
Okay.
That's the goal, but again, that's up to the team to work that out, depending on size, shape, how much, how little.
Right.
All that will go together, but this is the first key phase of this.
I guess the other question is as far as this facility is right now, you guys will do an evaluation to determine putting an addition on to this is the right thing to do? Or?
Absolutely. Not only from a financial perspective, but also just from a usability perspective.
I'm thinking more structurally, you know.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. And, you know, we kind of threw some of those ideas out at our initial interview, you know, what might this want to be? And we're going into this with no predetermined ideas. You know, I think we need to see how this develops. And ultimately, we also have to consider in this first phase, as we begin to talk about scheduling for the development of this project, how does that affect this building in its current state as we move forward? So those will be taken into consideration as well as that impact on the overall project budget. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Chris, your proposal had two alternatives. Explain to them how that, what if they like some from alternative A and some from B? Is there a third alternative then, or how do you handle that?
We see multiple options all the time. And in fact, here we're suggesting that, you know, two is a good number to get us into a ballpark of a realistic budget. But once we decide, and if we're picking portions of A and B, we can guide you on what that means from a financial perspective very early on. And then what we would normally do is take those two concepts, once we move into design development, which would be the next subsequent phase, we would then incorporate both of those into that mix and do that third design at that time. And honestly, then the third design becomes the design. That we continue to march forward with obviously some refinement moving forward.
Thank you. Any other questions?
If you would like to see more detail, Claudette has their full-blown RFQ, which is, if you haven't had a chance, check it out. Did a great job of explaining the approach, the team, their experience, their references, et cetera, et cetera. So if you haven't looked at it, it's here at Village Hall.
Real quickly, the cost projections that we had, does that seem reasonable?
I don't know that all the cost projections were entirely shared with the folks that interviewed. To simply put it straight though, you will work within your means to provide a building that you can afford. It might not have all the components, but it might have all the components. It really comes down to what's the combination of space versus level and quality of finish and building, construction type, as well as other amenities that we may be providing on the site. So I'm confident that our team is going to be able to guide you in this first step to make sure that we're on a realistic budget path. What I don't like, as a project manager doing it a long time here, is I don't like having to come back to the board and say, oh, by the way, it's another $100,000. But as we go through the process, we will be challenging some of the statements that are being said to us by everyone that's involved in that process. And what I mean by that is, if I hear something, well, we would love to have marble finish here, I may say, with your budget, that's not realistic, but how about we consider a porcelain tile that looks like that, that's a quarter of the price. So we're very familiar with how to work with those types of parameters within, again, the municipal sector. You know, a lot of our expenses is a lot of times in the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical systems as well. So we have to be very careful how we balance those systems with the aesthetic nature of the building, as well as, again, the site development expenses that are going to need to support the building as well.
Josh, they're going to evaluate slab on grade, basement, partial basement, no basement, two-story. They're going to provide all that for us and give us the pros and cons and the cost associated. But the reason we did the original program was our needs analysis at the time with the committee. We visited those other municipalities. We talked to construction managers, general contractors, and we got a ballpark. So we knew we weren't going 20,000, 30,000. We were more in the 12 to 15,000 range. But yet, we didn't want to take it too far until we got our team member on here that can give us those benefits.
Realistic.
Yes.
And, you know, even in Tim's actual thought about, you know, basement, no basement, slab on grade, the analysis we'll do there, a lot of that's dictated by where's the groundwater. You know, it may just not be realistic whatsoever to go down without an excessive amount of money being spent to keep the water out. So we then may choose to look at vertical, like Tim said. For the area that we're in here, you know, it's very much a one-story kind of residential development. We have to be very mindful of making sure that whatever we do design still kind of keeps that residential scale, but might be a two-story solution. So we'll be looking at those things as we go forward.
As soon as we have a feel for shape and size, we're going to immediately submit the proposal for soil borings, so that gives them, all of us, clear direction he drove around, he sees where the creeks, the channels, the Fox River are at, good indicator where the groundwater is.
Yes,
So-
sure.
So we're not gonna be going 8, 10, 12 feet.
Groundwater is everywhere right now.
Yeah, so when he says we wanna do a 12-foot basin, I said, I don't.
One of the things I think that was really talked about is the budget stuff and not building something we can't afford, knowing about that early enough, and that, Chris's team, we felt very comfortable that we would get those results, early, and that we could work with them to, you know. And, the other thing was the requirements that go into the police department, which are very, very, controlled, very tightly controlled, and, they have done a number of them. We felt very confident that, you know, they could help us get to that point. So, those things were all taken into consideration. So, Kevin?
I'm sorry, I asked you to try and give us an estimate of time over this whole thing. But can you give me an idea with regard to what point we'll have a number, a financial number?
At the end of this first initial 90 days, and then as we do the next phase of this work, which is design, development, and construction documents, we will provide you an updated cost estimate at the end of design development as well as in construction documents. We need to do that as we go, because normally in design development, that's when we start talking in more detail about finishes and budgets, as an example.
We want to answer.
Initially, we're in the ballpark with a budget estimate that is more streamlined. Once we're at the end of design development, it'll probably be a 40-page document I produce that is very well detailed as to where the money is being spent.
We want to be within the budget before we put the shovel in the ground and know
Right.
where we're
Well,
going,
yeah, it's just-
and work all those things out.
We don't want to
I think
surprise
that,
them.
yeah, no surprises. I think that was,
I'm just thinking of
A
other
pretty good
options
under-
that we have, and we're talking about maybe, you know, putting those up on the market, but maybe we want to hold off until we get this number. So, you know, we know we're going forward the right way, you know.
I think we have determined that already. I mean, we.
Well, I know we did that, but I mean,
I think the
it'd be,
difference is so great.
it would be, but it would be very certain if
The difference, I
we knew
think,
what this
is,
number was.
the difference is so much different that it wouldn't happen.
I understand.
No, we're looking at, what,
I'm just saying.
6, 9 months
you know,
or so?
You're looking at a guy that sold a Pure, and I don't have a Pure, and I sold it too soon, so, you know.
It's a very good comparison, but, yeah.
It is a very good comparison.
So about at the end of July, we'll kind of be in that mode of having a good feel for the first pass of the budget. Then about the end of October, we'll be somewhat at the end of design development with an updated budget. And then by the end of the year, which will be the end of construction drawings into the first part of January, we'll have that final number, and that's the one we're using when we go out to bid. So you'll get 3 chances to see where the budgets are as we go through our process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Move to approve David G. Dominguez facility data collection initial schematic design proposal contingent upon contract review. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Curry, second.
Second.
Trustee Frost. Any further discussion on the motion? With there being none, trustee Klumstein?
Aye.
Trustee Frost?
Aye.
Trustee Hagan?
Aye.
Trustee Curry? And trustee McAvoy? Motion carried.
You're hired. Thank you. Enjoy the candy.
Yeah, that was the seller.
Every month.
It always seems to be.
Come on, Chris, I'm empty already.
I left 2 extras by
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
I told you you're a smart guy.
Here, Michael, you got it.
Here, Michael, take it
Take
for the
it.
kid. Take it for the children.
Okay,
Take it for the
move to approve vehicle purchase, which is a 2019 T350 medium roof cargo van. It is a budgeted item, and the cost, after getting 4 bids together, is Victor Ford is the lowest at $30,067, which is without the lift gate. I'd like a motion to approve vehicle purchase. It is a budgeted item.
So,
Motion by trustee Curry.
Second.
Seconded by trustee McAvoy. Any further discussion on the motion?
You said Victor Ford was low bid?
Yes.
All right.
They were lower than the state bid. They actually, we got the state bid and they beat the state bid. The salesman, sure, I believe, lives in Johnsburg, is a resident here.
this is what Shannon will be using?
Pardon me?
Shannon will be using this?
This will be Shannon's vehicle. What we did is we had a vehicle going back to Public Works. We thought, after talking to Davey and Shannon, this would be more appropriate for him to work out, and then we're gonna put his vehicle back to Public Works that we took out of Public Works.
Okay.
On the roll, trustee McAvoy, trustee
Aye.
Curry,
Aye.
trustee Hagan,
Aye.
trustee Frost, trustee
Aye.
Klumsted.
Aye.
Motion carried. Committee reports.
I believe we missed an agenda item
I did?
before the presentation,
Yes.
chapter 7, amendments to chapter 7.
Oh, I did miss that, sorry about that. Business registration, okay. Ordinance, move to approve ordinance 19-20-06, amending chapter 7, licenses and fees. This is the business registration that we talked about at the last meeting, with the revision of, the fine was in that class of $250. I don't think we want to fine people $250 for not having a business registration. So the wording on that has changed for this chapter to $50 instead of $250.
And the nonprofit.
And the nonprofit, the wording in this also is the nonprofits, which are basically 3, the Moose, the Community Club, the Yacht Club, don't have to pay the $50. So can we have a motion to approve ordinance 7-20-06?
So move.
Motion by trustee McAvoy, second by trustee Frost. Further discussion on the motion, with there being none, trustee Klumstein,
Aye.
trustee Frost,
Aye.
trustee Hagan,
Aye.
trustee Curry,
Aye.
and trustee McAvoy.
Aye.
Motion carried. Now, a motion to move to go into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee of the village.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Frost, seconded by trustee Hagan. On the roll, trustee McAvoy.
Aye.
Trustee Curry.
Aye.
Trustee Hagan. Trustee Frost. Trustee
Aye.
Klumstein.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Mr. President, can I say something now that we have a